Hi, this is a demo to show you how to quickly test out transparent sessions, which is a boundary feature that makes it extremely simple for end users and remote users to connect to infrastructure resources, like Linux VMs over SSH, Windows servers over RDP, web apps over HTTPS, databases, Kubernetes clusters, and etc. We're going to start from the ground up and deploy a brand new HCP Boundary instance, which is a HashiCorp managed cluster and is the quickest way to get up and running. It's also available for free for up to 5 users, but you can choose to do this with a self-managed enterprise version if you prefer. So I'm going to start at the HCP login page and log in. You can create a new free account if you don't already have one. Once I log in, I'll click on Get Started with Boundary and then click Deploy Boundary. We'll give it a name and then we'll keep the default standard tier for this demo. Let's give it an administrative username and password and click Deploy. It'll take a few minutes for the cluster creation to complete, so we'll come back when it's ready. Alright, so our HCP Boundary cluster is up and running. We can use this URL to get to our cluster, or you can also click on the Open Admin UI button, which takes you to the cluster login page. We'll log in with the admin username and password that we created earlier. Since this is a brand new deployment, there are some quick start options for you to create a new target. Since this is just a demo, we'll create a web target using the HashiCorp.com webpage and set it to 443 for HTTPS access, and then click Save. It then gives you some links to download the desktop clients that an end user would use to connect to the targets. As of creation of this video, Transparent Session is a beta feature, so we'll skip this part and grab the beta version of the desktop client from a different link later. For now, we'll just click Done. Now it takes us to the admin UI, and we can see the test target that was created, which is a HashiCorp web address. In order for an end user to use Transparent Sessions, we need to create an alias for this target. So let's create one. The alias name can be anything you want. The important field is the alias value, which would be used by the end user to connect. It could be a URL, a host name, a DNS name, or some other naming convention that your organization uses. Since our target is a web page, we'll just use the web URL as the alias value. Let's click Save. Okay, so now we're all set up to test out the connection to the target as an end user. So let's grab our desktop client. You can download the desktop client from the Boundary install page. The link will be provided in the description below. Since I'm on a Mac, I'll grab the appropriate package. Once it's downloaded, click on the package to complete the install. Once installed, we'll launch our desktop client from the Application tab in Finder. When it's launched, it'll ask you for the Boundary cluster URL. You can find the Boundary cluster URL by going back to the HCP page and copying the link that's provided, or you can also grab it from your Boundary cluster's address bar. So we'll simply copy it and then paste it into our desktop client. Now let's log on as an end user. For simplicity, we'll use the same admin credentials from earlier. So as an end user, I can see the HashiCorp.com web test target. So all I need to do to connect to it is grab the alias, which is just a URL, and enter it into my browser address bar. Boundary will automatically create a session and proxy the connection through. If we look at the desktop client, you'll notice that there's now a new session that is now active. This proves that you've successfully configured and connected to a target using Transparent Sessions. You didn't need to interact with Boundary except for the initial login, and you didn't need to tell Boundary to initiate a session for you. So at this point, you may be thinking, what's the purpose of this? I can already connect to any public website without Boundary. Why would I need Boundary to do this for me? Well, the answer to this is that we're only using the HashiCorp website as a quick example target. In a real-world use case, an organization may have a private web application inside the network that they want to allow end users to be able to access. Boundary can provide that simple workflow that is similar to logging into a VPN, but Boundary provides better security, like credential management and enforcing least privilege access. Now let's create another example target to a Linux host with SSH access. I have an EC2 instance in my AWS environment that we can use to connect to. So we're going to go back to our admin UI and click on Targets. We'll create a new target. Let's give it a name. Let's then select type to be SSH. We'll then set the address. A quick note on this, that this is for demo purposes, so we'll use a public IP address for simplicity. In real-world production, we'll use a private IP address. There's a link to a separate video about self-managed workers that explains how to do this in the description below. We'll set the port number to be 22 for SSH. Then we'll add an alias, just like the web target earlier. Except this time, we'll set the alias value to be mysshtarget.boundary.dev. Again, this will be what end users would use for their SSH client, so it could conform to a naming convention that your organization uses. Let's click Add and then Save. The next thing we'll do is add injected credentials to our target so that the end users have a passwordless experience, reducing the chances of leaked credentials. Since we don't have credentials stored on Boundary yet, let's go ahead and add it. We'll first navigate to Credential Stores and click New. We'll give it a name and select Static, and then click Save. In our credential store, we'll click Credentials and click New and add a credential. We'll give it a name, select username and key pair, and then enter the username and SSH private key. Then we'll click Save. Now let's go back to our target and add these credentials to our SSH target. We'll select our target. We'll go back to the Injected Credentials tab, click Add, and then select the credentials that we just added in our Boundary Credential Store. Okay, so our SSH target is ready to go, as you can see here. Let's now pretend we are the end user and go back to our desktop client. If we refresh the desktop client, we can see our new SSH target, along with the alias for that target. As an end user, all I need to do is use my favorite SSH client. In my case, I'm going to use my terminal and connect using the alias. So I can just type SSH mysshtarget.boundary.dev. As you can see, it connects me right in over SSH, and I didn't have to handle any credentials or usernames or password. I also didn't need to know or care about my target's IP address or anything about the underlying network. With transparent sessions, I don't need to change my preferred tools or workflows. It's similar to using a VPN, except this is much simpler and more secure.